So in this work we're going to look at the various problems and realities of consequences that are religious, in fantasy, and in actual facts, and try to dispel the difference between them. That, generally speaking, you should know all these facts or know all these theories at least, and so just bear with me a bit and we'll get started. So the foundation of all religion is the Jewish Bible. It is certainly, by all measures, seems to be the very first religious organization or religious stories that were ever told. One of the latest religions is, of course, evolution, in which they state that, the first religion, or the religion that built all the rest of the religions, can't be right because chaos created everything, and so chaos is God, and you just built everything one piece at a time. And so we're going to look at those two basic theologies at the first part. I don't think we'll get to the others, but we'll just start here. So, the Jewish religion says that an intelligent being of some sort or other designed and built this world. And we're not looking at the Bible or their testimony of facts as the absolute evidence of this or that. Because, it's just a book written by men, stories told by men, interpreted by men, and so on. It's not God, it's a book, whether you like it or not. We can look at evolution, however, and because that is, the university mind that says, we can understand everything the way we want it to be. And that's what they do. They make their religion, and a religion is, you can't prove it, you just have to believe it. That's the basis of a religion, or more correctly, the basis of belief. You have to believe what you can't prove. So then it becomes a religion because it's not based upon facts. And of course, evolution says we have all the facts. Look at our book. And of course, religion, the Christian religion or the Jewish religion says, we have all the facts. Look at our book. As does every other religion. They all say, look at our book. Our book is God. Our book is right. It can't be wrong. That's how it is. And then they refuse to listen to anything else. So, but let's talk about evolution to start with, and the idea that chaos is your creator. So life began somewhere. That's fact. Life began somewhere. Now in evolution, they say life began on this planet, in one form or another. They'll even grant you that, a meteor came streaking across the sky at who knows how many miles per hour and crashed into the earth at who knows how much, with how much force, and some tiny little bitty microscopic creature of some sort or other came into the world that way. And of course they don't allow for what created that microscopic organism in the first place. An absolute fraud of every kind. But other than that, we'll look at evolution on its basis of, we built ourselves, which is the foundation of evolution. It says that life is the building process of one life that created the next form of life, that created the next form of life, and the next form, and the next form, and the next form. It just stepped out of the ocean and became a man over, a billion years or so, or billions, or whatever it is that they claim. So let's just look at that. So chaos is the reality of things going from complexity to the simplest form possible. Fire is one of those things that can be called chaos. It takes what is complex, and on this planet, we'll call it that chemical fire is the removal of molecular bonds. But chaos is the removal of complexity. That's what it is, that's what it does. Down to its most simple form, where the process stops. Because there's nothing left to burn, for instance, in fire. Whatever is left won't burn. That's why it stops. So, or, the process is interrupted in some form or other. So, in the first place, there's nothing about a living organism that isn't complex. So the very beginning, the very foundation of evolution, which is this is all an accident, cannot be sustained in any form or fashion, because nothing is reduced to its most simple form. Everything rises or builds into a complex form. And it doesn't do that on its own unless you agree that nothing built something. So let's just decide what it is that they could actually conceive of. And so we start with what they have. They start with rocks, water, and sunshine or volcanic action as the energy behind it. That's the basis of their building process. So those things, sand. I suspect we could allow them sand. Those things combined together and built a life, a microorganism that then became more and more and more and more. Well, a microorganism of any kind has to be contained by a boundary. In other words, it can't be just sloshing around water, in a puddle. It has to have something to contain the life chemicals inside. It doesn't have a containment area. It doesn't have a containment environment. It cannot form a life. And of course, the idea that a life is going to build out of a mud puddle is just totally errant. It doesn't happen. It's too much water. It's just not going to happen. So as far as building it itself, let's look at that. Let's look at that honestly. You got water, you got rock, sand, and some type of energy, radiation from the sun, or heat radiation, or some type of energy involved. And they say these things just created a life out of that. Well, you got to ask how it did that. Really, how did it do that? Sand doesn't have any tools. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have, it doesn't have sight or sound or touch or feel or anything like that, and neither does water. And as far as we know, the energy of radiation from the sun or the energy from radiation from a volcano doesn't have that either. Rocks don't have that either. So they have no tools, no senses, no brain, no conception of any kind, no thought process, nothing. Nothing. So nothing builds something. That seems a little bit, less than complex. Would you not agree? I mean, life is complexity controlled and contained in one little environment. And it does that by harnessing energy to be its slave, basically. But we have none of that in evolution. And so I say evolutionary idiots, fools if you prefer, say that well over billions of years and untold trillions and quadrillions and who knows how many individual experiments of these chemicals just slushing together, life had to have appeared. And they claim that the radiological dating or radiation decay proves that they're right. Well, radiation dating has problems. First problem is that if you want to go back millions of years, okay, let's go back millions of years, in this particular solar system, with this particular sun, we're not changing it around any. This is how it is, this is what was here, this is it. So given that, the sun produces energy that heats our world. That energy reaches out, touches us, and heats our planets and ourselves. that means it's using energy. Okay? The sun uses energy. And it uses atoms for fuel, but that's beside the point. So the sun uses energy. And if the sun uses energy, then it had to be bigger 1,000,000 years ago. Quite a bit bigger, you would think. Got to burn for 1,000,000 years. So it had to be bigger. There had to be more fuel involved for this to be happening. That's a physiological fact. So now if it was bigger, so that the fuel that was burnt over 1,000,000 years could have disappeared, and we'd have fuel left to burn, then the sun had to be heating this planet far more than it does today. A bigger sun, stretching farther out into the solar system with more energy, is going to heat the planet more. That's just facts. So how much more is an interesting theory, but I'm not interested in numbers. Let's just say that the planet was 200 or 300 degrees hot on average. Probably somewhere in that range. And the planet didn't have an atmosphere at the time. If, in fact, we're talking about a period that was before a moon hit us or something. But that's a separate issue. Anyway, let's assume that the planet doesn't have an atmosphere, or it wasn't outgassing from the rocks. Most of our atmosphere is outgassing from plants and things that have occurred. Not all, most of the usable atmosphere that we have. So anyway, we have an atmosphere that doesn't contain any oxygen, probably. It might. But we don't know what it contained, not for a fact. So anyway, without an atmosphere to discourage the radiation from the sun, which was much bigger, impacting the rocks and the miscellaneous things on the planet, the radiational decay of rocks and things on this planet would have been much more severe. In other words, the process of aging would have been highly accelerated, because extreme radiation does that. It's the decay of atomic boundaries and the decay of atomic bonds and things like that. So if we have something that's being radiated at much higher levels, we cannot expect or assume that there is an ozone layer. Perhaps there was. We don't know. If there was not an ozone layer to protect us, a big one, then of course we have high degrees of radiation touching everything. And all forms of radioactive dating are then errant, because we don't know how long that occurred. Although we can determine if it was 1,000,000 years ago and the sun is still burning, we can see that the process of that was for a long, long time, according to evolutionists. So anyway, dating is false. We also have the impact of the moon, what is now our moon, into the earth. And most will agree that our moon undoubtedly struck our earth, or what the parts and pieces of it as is, struck our earth and almost destroyed it into several pieces. It didn't, that's how come we have oceans. Everything else in the solar system around that we know of is spherical. Doesn't have great big valleys and great big depressions and great big areas of the planet that are, could be oceans. It really doesn't exist so much. So the moon crashed into the planet and everything reformed, and we got an atmosphere out of that, or a lot of the atmosphere out of that. And I'm sure that impact and that turning of the what was the original moon, let's say, into the core of the Earth is where all volcanic actions and water actually no doubt come from. Chemical process and the formation of water requires a great deal of heat and energy, and that is no doubt where it came from. At least in my mind. You can argue that if you wish. But anyway, we're talking about radiological dating and whether or not that could be accurate. And of course, if we have a rock or what would become a moon crash into the planet and then basically destroy the so much, changing the atomic links and the bonds and everything else, that too would have influenced the radioactive dating that you're dependent upon today and proven it false. So we don't really know how old the Earth is by those rocks. And we don't really know how old the Earth is by a meteor. Meteors circle the sun or pass by other suns or whatever it is they do, and that extreme radiation can have and does have an effect. Not to mention it's burning into the atmosphere here and crashing into the Earth, and those things alter radiation dating too. So your radiation dating is not accurate and it doesn't count. So I go to the Big Bang theory, or the dark hole in space, or the place where there isn't anything that they looked into with the Hubble telescope and said, wow, look on the other side of that hole, there's more galaxies and things over there. So the universe is then 13.5 billion years old, because that's what we say it is. But that hole that doesn't contain any mass is where the Big Bang occurred. Every explosion, of course, radiates in basically all directions, or radiates in one force pushes out the other force. For every action there's an opposite reaction, so half the mass went this way and half the mass went that way, and so on. So that means that there's a center of the explosion, and the center, of course, is that black hole. It doesn't have any mass. So that's where the beginning is, so you cannot say that what's on the other side is, that much more. That's just simply that much more past the originating center. And age actually, or time actually, does not begin until mass reforms, or forms itself. So you have that whole space in between the center and the first parts of what is mass identified. That doesn't actually account for time, because time is the decay of atomic bonds and things that indicate this has been here quite some time. So anyway, what we have is dating methods that are not accurate by any means. So if you have a million years, you have radiation, you have too much heat, you have no atmosphere until the moon hits the Earth, and then changes the whole Earth itself, and then you have to have atmospheres come up, and then you have to have things like that, including the atmosphere of a planet will not adhere to the planet unless there is sufficient reason or cause for the atmosphere to attach itself to the planet as it turns. So we have that as well. So every other planet in the solar system has air speeds or wind speeds on the surface of the planet of about 700 miles per hour, because the planet and the gas from the atmosphere of the planet do not turn together in general, if it has any atmosphere at all. So and that would have been true for the Earth as well. There's no reason to believe it wouldn't be. Why would it not? And so now we have the rise of plants. Something has to slow the wind so that it can turn at the very same speed as the planet. That's just a fact of life. Something has to slow it down. And of course, when we have a moon impacting the planet and everything reshaping itself, there's going to be some slowing down of and some creation of atmosphere, and there's going to be some weight involved, and no doubt there is water into the atmosphere from from that creation of water that was the moon impacting the earth, or what would become the moon impacting the earth. All of that slowed the planet probably and slowed the atmosphere. And so then there would be room for plants to potentially rise if a complex organism that had thought was able to create it. Now, there is nothing simple about life. Nothing. Let's look at your body. Your human body has 206 bones, as I remember, and 650 muscles or something like that. Every one of those bones has to be built and placed in its proper position. Every one of those. Your foot has 30 or 40 bones. I don't remember. Who cares? But they all have to be there. They all have to be lubricated. And they all have to have a specialized end on them so that they can move together without coming apart. If it doesn't have that, it doesn't work. And then you have to tie them together so that they don't move where you don't want them to move. And you have to knit them together with the muscles so that they will move when you want them to move. And then, of course, you need thought processes to make them move. And you need, hearts and lungs and blood and stomachs and acids to make food possible, and arms and hands and things so you can have tools to use. And then you need a brain to work it all. Without a brain, the body is useless. So the whole idea of evolution is that, the brain was last. Didn't need no damn brain. The brain was last. That's the great thing. But unfortunately, evolutionaries seem to have lost their brain. They threw it away. I don't know why. They just threw it away. Because a brain is required. Actually, in all life. Some form of recognition of life is required. So, anyway, we have just a useless religion. Really, the witch doctors are superior to the university-driven evolutionary consumption of stupidity. Seriously, they are beyond stupid. There's no possibility that an accident, which of course has to continue itself. Let's suppose they formed one life. Let's just suppose it. If some microorganism formed one life. Now it needs, if it's going to live, it has to have two lives, and more. It has to reproduce itself. Well, why would it reproduce itself? And it says, well, it's osmosis. It's one body that forms another body. It just, splits apart. All right, so let's split it apart. Well, now what are you using for energy and food and materials to build another life? How is it that whatever form of motion inside the organism that we call life occurs, how is it that you just take half of that or whatever and make another one? It doesn't really happen. Not really. Food. Does it need food? Well, it needs something. How can it take air in? Does it get food out of the air? What is the food? And of course, there is no such thing as a dirt at the beginning of this process of their building life, because dirt is organisms that have died and decayed and created miscellaneous materials that are complex enough to make a more complex body out of. So anyway, we're talking about the miscellaneous things. Seriously, your heart. If you're going to get to 70 years old, your heart's going to beat like 3 billion times. We don't build anything like that. Look at an acrobat. We don't build anything like that. Look at anything. We can't build anything like that. And so the idea on the reality and the miracle that is life on this planet is clearly by the evidence created by some form of thought. Thought builds, thought engineers, thought creates technical realities that can combine together. Thought is the basis of life itself. That's the facts. Thought is the basis of life itself. Without a brain, you have nothing. Even if you have a body, you still have nothing. But it takes thought to engineer and build a body and put everything in the right spot. You know, your evolutionists, you know, they say 6 billion combinations of 4 individual genetic markers, genes, created them with just a big accident. And that is not nearly everything that is involved in the process of building a life. Not nearly. And of course, your evolutionists are the gods of, or the religion of your university gods who claim that they can create more and better life. Think about that. More and better life in their own image by mutilating genetic materials, which are nature itself. Nature is the building of a body of life. And it does that by genetic instruction. That's the beginning of it, at least. And so your geneticist, your university, extra special, gotta believe anything they say, gods, with their book, say, you know, we have to be right. We're gonna build us whatever we want. Yes, we're going to combine insects into men and combine snakes into fish, and who knows what the hell they want to do. They want to destroy the disciplines of genetics, the disciplines, order, and balance of genetics that form your body. And they do that deliberately because they intend, or they believe, that they're going to be able to figure out how to put it back together again once they understand how to take it apart. And since taking it apart is so much easier than putting it together, that's the plan. Make it collapse, and then we can put it together ourselves in the way we want. But of course, the real plan is to completely destroy life. Completely horrify the process of genetic building. Because once things are not what they should be, then there's nothing left but the horrors of what will be from that. A complete tragedy beyond description. Well, you're going to know if you don't stop them. You know, arms growing out of your head and feet growing out of your mouth, and who knows, a snake growing out of your ass. You know, they have no clue, and they have no right, and they have no ability to understand what it is or isn't there that they are doing. Because after all, take a look at it, they are the people who presented evolution as God and teach it to every child in the poverty of a mind that they just simply threw away. They did. They just simply threw it away so they could play God themselves. That's the purpose of it. And unfortunately, humanity itself has to be extremely blind and extremely delusional and extremely disrespectful to accept evolution in any form. That's you. So, you know, you can try to dig yourself out of the hole they created for you and search back for truth. Or you can just let the world die. Because that is exactly what your universities are doing with their decision to alter genetics and play with extreme energies and try to bring the same fire that's on the sun here to this earth, and discard all forms of resource and all forms of life survival and all forms of chains of life and every part of the ocean that could be saved, and everything they are threatening. And you are threatening as well, because we grow as a population by 100 million people every year or more. That's another billion in a decade of mouths to feed, and we can't do it. There is, an enormous amount of tragedy ahead. And that's all because you just want what you want, and you don't want no responsibilities, and you don't want no truth either. And that's because you want to do whatever it is you want to do. And you don't want no damn thing to be changing what you want to do, even if it kills the future. Shame on you. The functional or fundamental difference between the religion that is a Jewish Bible and the reality of what evolution declares, which is the university's description of our religion, is quite simply evolution declares mass came first. Whereas the Bible declares that thought came first. As in, creation cannot be accomplished by anything less than thought. Choose. 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 Choose.